This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
It began like something out of a nightmare. Except no one in Northport, Florida could have imagined a nightmare this personal. A scream in the dark, the sound of fists pounding on a door, a neighbor calling 911 because someone was begging for help. And when police got there, a house that looked a lot less like a home and more like the aftermath of a massacre. Jennifer and Robbie Tower were found lying face down on the floor, head to head, their bodies surrounded by blood. They were the ones who had once opened that home to a teenage boy from Ukraine, a child they thought they were saving from a life of abandonment and abuse. His name was Dima Tower, and now police say he was the one who killed them. This wasn't just a homicide, it was the collapse of a promise. A story that started with hope and ended with horror. Jennifer and Robbie weren't rich, they weren't famous, they were just good people who believed that love could fix broken things. They'd married young, built a modest life in Northport, and after years of trying to start a family, decided that their hearts were big enough to adopt. In 2016, they met a 14-year-old Ukrainian orphan named Dima. Reports later said his orphanage had been harsh, institutional, even abusive, the kind of place where you learn to survive, not to trust. For Jennifer and Robbie, that was exactly why they wanted to bring him home. They believed they could give him safety, stability, a future. They'd save money, jump through international adoption tape, taken the flight, signed the papers. They thought this would be the story of redemption, a happy ending. But there's a truth most people don't want to talk about when it comes to older children adoption, especially from war-torn or impoverished regions. Sometimes you're not just adopting a child, you're adopting their trauma. You're inheriting years of fear, neglect, and distrust, and no matter how much love you pour in, that damage doesn't just vanish. It festers. And that is exactly what happened here. Police records show that the Tower's dream began to crack just 2 years later in December of 2018. Jennifer called police after Dima allegedly shoved her when she walked into his room. He was angry, defensive, refusing to talk. Nothing major came of it, just a note in a report. Another teenage outburst, they thought, but that would become the first of many. In April of 2019, Dima ran away after being grounded. Police found him later and brought him home. A few months after that, he was caught near a school carrying a BB gun. When officers stopped him, he said he was going to shoot soldier toys. A strange answer, a red flag, and if anyone really wanted to see it, By that fall, October 2019, Robbie Tower was sleeping behind a locked door. He told police he did it because he was afraid of his son. Imagine that, locking yourself in at night to stay safe from the child you adopted to protect. The boy you tucked in, fed, and tried to love. In 2020, there was another incident, a domestic violence arrest that prosecutors later dropped. Maybe the Towers didn't want to press charges. Maybe they believed he could still change. Either way, the pattern was clear. Something dark was building inside that home. Fast forward to August 31st of 2023, a humid Florida night. A neighbor hears banging on her door. A woman screaming for help. The call to 911 comes in just before midnight. When officers arrived at 1240 Malacot Road, the sight inside is indescribable. Jennifer and Robbie are dead. lying head to head, face down, blood everywhere. It's on the couches, the door, the kitchen, the bed, even a towel in the sink is soaked through. This wasn't a quick act of violence. It was rage, sustained, brutal, and personal. And outside, according to the police report, their son Dima is seen covered in blood, loading things into the trunk of a car. He looks up and sees the flashing lights and bolts. What follows is a chase down Interstate 75. Police deploying stop sticks to shred his tires. Dima abandoning the car, running into the dark woods. He makes it through the night, but the next morning officers find him at a gas station, still wearing the same blood-stained clothes. He doesn't resist, doesn't cry, doesn't say a word, just stares. That's how a rescue story dies. Now he's sitting in a Sarasota County courtroom charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of fleeing from police. The state isn't seeking the death penalty. The maximum is life in prison. His defense team offered to plead guilty to manslaughter in exchange for 40 years. Prosecutors said no. They'll consider manslaughter, but they want life. This trial isn't about who did it. It's no mystery there. The blood, the fight, the evidence, it's overwhelming. The question is why? What broke inside this boy, this man, that made him turn on the people who took him in? Some point to the trauma he carried from Ukraine. Family members have said the orphanage he came from was brutal, like a prison. One relative of Robbie Tower told reporters the kind of place that can twist a child's idea of love into fear, where attachment becomes dangerous and affection feels like a threat. Psychologists call it reactive attachment disorder, a condition that can grow out of severe neglect. It's when the child's brain learns early on that closeness equals pain. And when that happens, love becomes the enemy. But understanding isn't the same as forgiving. When Dima endured, or whatever Dima endured before, it doesn't explain the sheer brutality of what happened in that Northport house. 2 people slaughtered in their own home by the person they literally saved. This is what makes a story so hard to wrap your head around. It's not some career criminal or stranger breaking in. It's family. It's a mother and father who saw the warning signs, called for help, slept behind locked doors, and were still trying to love their son. You want to believe that love can fix things like this, that with enough therapy, enough patience, enough faith, it'll all smooth out. But sometimes love walks straight into the path of destruction, convinced it can outlast the storm. And let's be honest, if this story were fiction, people wouldn't believe it. An orphan from Ukraine, adopted at 14, turning on his parents 4 years in a quiet Florida suburb. It sounds like a headline built for shock value. But the records are real. The bodies are real. The blood on the walls was real. And what's left now is a courtroom where a jury has to decide whether this was calculated murder or a lifelong emotional implosion that finally detonated. And it ends the same way. He's going to prison. And he should. He's dangerous to himself and others. How he got there, that's a tragedy in itself. The defense will likely argue that Dima wasn't thinking clearly. This was a break, a moment of psychosis, years of trauma finally overwhelming him. The prosecution will argue intent, 2 victims, multiple injuries, a scene that screams deliberation, not impulse. Either way, the verdict won't bring Jennifer and Robbie Tower back. It won't answer the bigger question of how something like this could happen in the first place, how a family could slip so slowly towards catastrophe without anyone being able to stop it. No. Denial and magical thinking is how that happens. Thinking that love can fix this kind of trauma. It can't. Neighbors described Jennifer and Robbie as the kind of couple who always smiled, who volunteered, who believed deeply in giving back. They didn't just adopt Dima. They restructured their lives around him, counseling, schooling, support groups. But every report shows the same pattern. He pushed back harder each time they tried to reach him. He is that damaged. And look, it's not his fault. But he is a monster. A monster that's not going to be changed, that can't be changed, that's already shown what it can do. How did that monster see them? Maybe he saw them just as another set of people trying to control him. It wouldn't be a crazy thought considering the world he came from. Maybe he resented them for being symbols of everything he'd lost, or maybe it's simpler. Maybe he just never learned what love actually was. So when he was finally surrounded by it, he couldn't stand it. When police captured him the next morning, he didn't fight, he didn't run again. It was as if he'd already accepted it was over. And in a way, it had been over long before that night. That's the quiet tragedy here. Not just the murders, but the years leading up to them. The slow erosion of trust, the little signs ignored or misunderstood by well-meaning people who can't grasp reality. A family trying to hold together something that was never whole to begin with. As the trial moves forward, the courtroom will become a stage for questions that have no real answers. Could the Towers have done more? Could social services have intervened? Should a child with that kind of trauma ever have been placed in a traditional home environment in America at all? But the justice system isn't built to answer those kinds of questions. It deals in evidence, not emotion, in statutes, not heartbreak. The jury won't be deciding whether adoption agencies failed or whether our mental health system left a family defenseless. They'll be deciding whether Dima Tower knew what he was doing when he picked up whatever weapon he used that night, and whether that intent adds up to murder. The prosecutors will talk about the brutality, the chase, the calm afterwards. They'll call it deliberate. The defense will probably talk about damage, trauma, mental illness, a lifetime of fear turned inwards until it burst outwards. But things like this, both of them, might be true simultaneously. But one doesn't cancel out the other. There's a deeper irony that lingers in a case like this. Jennifer and Robbie Tower believed in second chances. They saw a child from halfway around the world and believed they could rewrite his story. And in a way they did, but not the way anyone imagined. Their kindness became the foundation for their own destruction. A family friend told reporters they wanted to help someone who had no one. They just wanted to give him a chance. And maybe that's what makes this story so gut-wrenching. They gave him everything, and he gave them death. You can picture the house now. The photos still on the walls, the memories frozen in place, the furniture marked off by crime scene tape, the echoes of ordinary life colliding with something monstrous. This isn't just a murder trial. It's a story about faith in the goodness of people and what happens when that faith meets something it can't heal. When this trial ends, maybe in a few days, weeks, maybe longer, there won't be closure. There rarely is. The verdict will come, the cameras will leave, and the quiet neighborhood in Northport will still have to live with what happened in that one house on Malacott Road. But maybe the lesson here isn't about evil or punishment. Maybe it's about how fragile love really is when it's asked to carry something it was never meant to fix. Because what happened in that house didn't start with murder. It started with hope. And that's the part that hurts the most. Jennifer and Robbie Tower believed they were saving a life. And maybe they did for a little while. But the tragedy of the story is that saving them and saving him, they couldn't save themselves. And now that boy they called their son will spend the rest of his life, or whatever sentence the jury decides, remembering the two people who tried hardest to love him and the night he destroyed them. That's what's left when rescue turns to ruin. That's what's left in the case of Dima Tower. We're going to be bringing you the audio of this trial on our podcast platform, so if you want to hear it, be sure to press subscribe on Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski wherever you get podcasts. So be sure to find that and press subscribe. I'll bring you those daily audio updates from the courtroom, raw and real, of how this plays out. Be sure to search and press subscribe if you're not already there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. Is there anything that could have been done? Should they have recognized these warning signs earlier, or did they recognize them? They clearly did. They were sleeping with their door locked. But once you're in that situation, once you're that parent, what options do you have other than locking the door and hoping for the best? When you're exhausting all mental health resources, when you're trying everything, and that little angel you thought you brought home turns out to be evil. That's what that couple was facing. And it ended with their lives being taken away. Your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.